Chris, I sent you a package. Do not open it. Okay? Do not open it. Just take it to Tom. Don't tell anyone, but he'll know what to do. There's something I gotta do up here, but, tuck the girls in for me, and, give him a kiss. I love you, Chrissy.
Fallen Leaf, the indie studio behind Fort Solis, has released a short story that follows the events that take place after the end credits of their game. The short story is called Fort Solis: The Aftermath. On today's video, we will be reading that story. 2 days after the events of Fort Solis, Jack sat on the end of a bed, staring into the floor, reflecting, contemplating his situation. Reaching into his pocket, he removed his wallet and looked at a photo of his kids. He smiled faintly. The thought of getting back to them is his sole motivation. His thoughts are interrupted by a sudden knock at the door. Jack places the wallet back in his pocket and opens the door. An agent of Central Security stood at the door, dressed in full uniform. "Mr. Leary, they are ready for you." Jack looks back at the empty hotel room and then back at the agent, and nods. Jack follows the agent down the hall. They both stand in silence as the agent calls the elevator. Jack looks down at the agent's belt, armed with a firearm. He looks down the hall, noticing they are alone. He contemplates for a minute their intentions, and now the firearm becomes more attractive. Jack's arm slowly moves closer. The elevator's arrival snaps Jack out of it, and the two men step into the elevator. The agent selects a floor. "How are you feeling?" "I read the debrief by our team," the agent asks. Jack, unsure of how to answer, looks back at the agent. "You read the file. How do you think I'm feeling?" The agent nods in agreement, and the two men await the elevator's arrival at the selected floor. The doors open and the two men walk down the hall towards the meeting room. As they arrive at their destination, they are greeted by two more agents. "Mr. Leary," a woman offers her hand. Jack accepts. "I'm Agent Watson. This is my colleague, Agent Hopkins. Should we head in?" Jack nods and heads into the room resembling that of an interrogation. A table, two chairs, bright lights. All three are seated. Watson reaches over and places down a recorder. "Thank you for sitting with us, Jack. We know it can't be easy, but I hope you understand that we need to act fast on the matter. Has anyone informed Jessica's family?" Jack looked back at Watson. Agent Hopkins sat forward. "I'm Detective Hopkins. I can assure you that we are moving forward with the protocol regarding Jessica, but at the moment I am not able to share those steps with you. I hope you understand the confidential nature of a company death." Jack then looked back at Watson. "Why am I here? I have already given my statement." Hopkins then took out a packet of cigarettes. He offered one to Jack. Given the circumstances, Jack accepts and both men activate the light. "Mr. Leary, please understand that the nature of the events that occurred at Fort Solis for us to understand. Why not go there and see? I have never met Wyatt. I don't have any answers for his actions." Agent Hopkins could notice the elevation in Jack's voice and took a breath from his smoke. "Jack, we have more questions today. After that, we can elevate the next steps." At this point, Agent Watson begins to acknowledge the recording. The time is 11:42 a.m. Agent Watson and Hopkins are present with Senior Engineer Jack Leary from Fort Minor. "For the record, Jack, please acknowledge your presence." "I am present." "Great," smiles Watson. "You previously stated that you arrived at Fort Solis due to an alarm triggered manually by Fort Solis." "That's correct," nodded Jack. "How did you identify the alarm?" added Hopkins. "I received it on my multi-tool whilst..." Jack paused as the weight of the reflection crept up his throat like an insect. "Whilst Jess and I were fixing a drill." Watson acknowledged Jack and opened a file. Watson passed Jack a series of photos. Jack looked down at the items. "What are these?" "Those, Jack, are images of your arrival at Solis. We know that you entered the facility. Can you explain why, once you discovered Oscar, you did not call in the incident?" "Like I said, I asked Jess to call it in. I was caught up in the situation, and Jess was able to inform Central." Jack looked down at the photos. "Atrium, Medical Bay, Maintenance Unit. We have no record of the call, Mr. Leary. How is this even possible? Jess called it in." Jack was totally perplexed as to what the detectives were saying. "There is no record of the call," Watson repeated. Jack snapped back. "Then how did your security team find out?" Hopkins sat forward and closed Jack's statement. "The team was responding to an alarm call from Fort Solis. Upon their arrival, they..." Hopkins then opens a separate file to read verbatim. "Arrived to find two men engaged in a violent moment." Jack sat up, looking back at Hopkins, his mind racing, seeing images of Wyatt haunts his mind. His mind slowly moved back to the greenhouse, to the airlock. "When you were at Fort Solis, you visited the greenhouse?" Watson asked. Jack abandoned the nightmare in his mind and looked back at Watson. "That's correct." "What do you know about the Better Tomorrow project?" Hopkins followed up. "Nothing. I never heard of it." Jack then looked back at Watson. "What is this all about?" You have my statement, you clearly have the footage, what more do you need from me? Well, that's our issue, Mr. Leary. Shortly after your arrival at Fort Solis, the live camera system was deactivated. Later, the system was completely reset. I told you that wasn't me. I don't know anything about a system reset. I was held captive. It is all in my statement. Watson looked at Hopkins and placed her bag on the table. Reaching in, Watson reached in and removed a multi-tool in a clear plastic bag. Jack instantly recognized it. Hopkins then opened another file. Do you recognize this item? Watson immediately added, for the record, we are sharing item 2CA with Mr. Leary. Jack reached for the bag and looked at the multi-tool. He then looked back at Watson. Can you open it for me? Watson looked back at Jack, acknowledging his right arm was in a sling. Of course, the multi-tool still had blood on it from the night, weathered, damaged, and worn. Jack looked at the multi-tool and used his thumb to turn it on. It's mine. The content on this tool has been reviewed by our team. Can you tell me what you know about the officer Dunpart? Dunpart? Helen? I found her in the Artium. I couldn't get the door open in time. My helmet was off. Mr. Leary, please share with us anything you know about Officer Dunpart and the Better Tomorrow Project, asked Hopkins once again. I told you I don't know anything about that. Jack now begins to grow very frustrated with the repeated questions. Agent Watson once again reached into the bag and removed another item. For the record, Mr. Leary is now presented with the item 3DF. A photo was slid across the table to Jack. Jack looked down in complete shock. There, Jess and he were at a party along with other colleagues. We took this from Jessica's social profile. Are you able to recall this event? Asked Watson. Jack tried to think about the night. A social drink could have been any event. He could hear Jess in his ear, always reminding him to smile in photos. He took comfort in that, and he smiled. Fun night? Asked Hopkins. I don't remember the evening, answered Jack. This is a kickoff party for the Better Tomorrow program. All Terra employees had the opportunity to attend. Here, both Jessica and you are clearly in attendance. Yet you claim you have no knowledge of the program. Hopkins took another smoke. Wait, what? Jack is now beginning to really grow concerned about their question's nature. I have no recollection of ever being at this event. I only discovered Helen at Solis. Hopkins' demeanor now changes. He stands from his chair. Mr. Leary, you have stated that you have no knowledge of this program, yet you attended the kickoff party. The live cams were disabled with a system reset at Solis, and we have multiple deaths at the scene. I would suggest before we speak tomorrow that you ask for your legal representation. Interview concluded at 12:32. Watson then reaches over and turns off the recorder. We would like to speak with you tomorrow with legal representatives. Agent McCormick will show you back to your room. Hopkins then knocked on the door and Agent McCormick appeared. Has anyone informed her family? Am I free to leave this hotel? Asked Jack. Sadly, not at this moment, Mr. Leary. You must remain here, replied Agent Watson. Jack stood up and followed the agent down the hall, his mind racing about their persisting questions about Helen, the Better Tomorrow Project. What even was that, he wondered. Both men stepped into the elevator, silence once again as the gentle ambient music played. The elevators arrived, and both men headed back to Jack's room. Am I able to make a call? Asked Jack. Of course, I'll have the reception have your legal representation call the room, answered McCormick. I want to call my family. Sadly, that's not yet possible due to the investigation, replied McCormick. What investigation? What has this got to do with me? Jack now begins to realize the nature of his situation. Jack stepped into his room. Get some rest, Mr. Leary. The door closed, and Jack walked over to his desk. He opened some pain medication and took it with a glass of water. He then quietly walked back to the door and looked through the peephole. McCormick had remained outside. Jack stepped back. What in the hell was going on? Why was he being held? He opened his balcony door and stepped out. Looking down at Center Point, the bright lights, amazing technology towers, and even in the far distance, the airstrip. Terra had so much invested in Mars. What did he walk into at Solis? Sirens disrupted his thoughts. In the faint distance, Jack looked at the back of the door. He knew what was happening. He looked across at the opposite balcony. The door opened. Then his mind was made up. I need to get out of here before they come back. Jack stepped across. He had to escape. He had to find answers for Jessica. This concludes the story of the Aftermath. This short story seems to blur the lines of the game events even more, as the game makes it feel like Jack is saved and Jessica was the one who alerted the team. But it seems like someone is trying to frame Jack and Jessica for the events that occurred. Something much bigger is going on, and Jack will be on a quest to find out who and what was behind the events of Fort Solis. Once again, I'd like to thank Fallen Leaf for their incredible work on Fort Solis. I cannot wait to see what comes next. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you on our next video.
Jack! Come in, Jack! Are you okay? Central, come in. Central.
Roger, this is Central.
This is Jessica Appleton, Fort Minor.
We have your incident report and we have dispatched security forces to evaluate the situation.
How long before they're there?
Not until morning. They are dispatched from Meridiani Planum. Please remain calm whilst you wait.
Hang in there, Jack. I'm on my way.